Today on Ministry Monday, I'm speaking with Gail Hartin. Hi, Gail. How are you?
Hi, doing great. Thank you, Amanda.
Good. I'm so glad to be talking with you today about Cantor certificates. Cantor certificates are, I think, a big thing. They're a very large component of what NPM offers. And so to be frank, have never sat down with you and talked with you about them. So I'm thrilled that we have this chance today. Thank you for sitting down with me.
I'm delighted to be a part of this today.
Excellent. Great. Now, before we kind of get into the nitty gritty, let me ask, Gail, how did you get involved with NPM?
Well, I had been a cantor actually in middle school and high school, and then took a sabbatical for a while and got involved then in the choir at my parish, Mary Immaculate, when my children were in high school and were singing in the choir. And our music director told us about NPM, and he had invited me to become a part of the cantor ministry. So I was very interested in joining NPM and took part in some of the formation. There was a Cantor Express weekend here in Dallas that I took part in, and then ultimately decided to take the certification journey. And so I've been active in NPM ever since.
Wow. How many years has that been, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh gosh, 15 years or so, I guess.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, that's wonderful. So how did you transition then from being involved in that way to really overseeing the Cantor certificate programs?
I was invited to join the what was called the Cantor Steering Committee at that time. And they had asked me to help them write rubrics for the Cantor Colleague exam. I had completed the Cantor Colleague certificate, and they asked me to help write some rubrics for the grading of the exams. And then from there, was asked to become the administrator for the ICC, the Intermediate Cantor Certificate, and then eventually was asked to become the chair of the Cantor Certificate Committee. So I've had a lot of opportunities to be involved in the nuts and bolts, really, of how we communicate with the applicants, and how we communicate the expectations, and how we assess those expectations when they have their adjudication and their exams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Let's start right there, actually.
Okay.
Big picture, before we really go into Cantor certificates and each one individually. Why, in your opinion, why are certificate programs important? Why are certificate programs important?
That's a great question. There are a lot of different pathways and callings into the cantor ministry, and some cantors have formal professional training as singers or as liturgists. Some, like me, like to sing and have been involved as a lay person, a lay minister in their choirs and as cantors, and perhaps don't have the same kind of background, particularly the formal background in liturgy and scripture and all. So the certificate provides a baseline, a set of standards, and it can be a means of affirming and documenting that a cantor is able to demonstrate the knowledge and skills that are essential to the ministry.
Not only does it help to demonstrate those skills, like you just said, but how can certificate programs advance a musician, and specifically a cantor, professionally?
Well, most churches don't require cantors to have certificates, but some actually do. We're finding that some of our applicants are telling us their parish expects it. Some dioceses have the expectation that any cantor who sings at a liturgy at the cathedral will hold a certificate. And the other part is that pastors and music directors are sometimes a little reluctant to have cantors they don't know who are asked to sing for family weddings or family funerals and that kind of thing. And it's understandable that they would want to have some assurance that this cantor is capable of fulfilling the ministry. And the certificate really helps there. When I sang for my mom's funeral in another state, I emailed my certificate to the funeral director, and he was able to contact the priest and the music director and make it all happen flawlessly. And a lot of cantors have shared that kind of thing. And sometimes a cantor certificate is also viewed as an advantage if someone's being considered, say, for a section leader role in their choir.
That's such a good idea. Gail, I'll be honest, I never thought about that, but in those situations where I have to step blindly into a parish, because like you said, maybe it's my cousin's wedding at another
Mhm.
church or another city or a funeral for a loved one, we know as pastoral musicians, as music directors, we don't necessarily know the level of expertise or knowledge that a guest vocalist, a guest cantor
Right,
has. So it is
right.
such a good idea to keep that certificate on hand. I did not put two and two together for weddings and funerals.
And again, it's just a way of affirming and documenting that you have those musical and liturgical and spiritual qualities that are needed.
Right, exactly. Okay, so the certificate programs for cantors, who are
Mhm.
they aimed at specifically? Do you have to be a certain age or experience level to pursue one?
It is intended for adult cantors, mainly because of the developmental nature of the spiritual and scriptural part of the process. We have started a conversation about perhaps developing a youth cantor certificate, but that's just at the very beginning stages of conversation. So, but we have had some college students. Typically, if they're over 18, then it's appropriate for them to do our certificate. And since they build on each other, all applicants start with the basic cantor certificate. So even a cantor with limited experience would be likely to feel comfortable striving for that certificate. Um, and so if a cantor has a lot of experience, then they might make a decision once they complete what we call the BCC, they might make a decision to move fairly quickly on to the intermediate certificate. But there's no prescribed timeline. There's nothing that says you have to complete all three certificates. So it really accommodates people at all ages and stages of their ministry.
Can you explain the different levels of cancer certification?
Sure. And we use a lot of acronyms. So if you hear me refer to the BCC, that's the basic cantor certificate. The
Okay.
ICC is the intermediate cantor certificate, and the CCC is the cantor colleague certificate.
Okay.
And as I said, each one builds on each other. There's a scope and sequence on the website on the cantor certificate webpage that gives a great overview of the knowledge and skills for each certificate. There's a chart where you can look at them side by side and see. Each level involves singing two psalms, one being a chant psalm and one being a melodic. And then there's service music. So, for example, for the BCC, it's that you sing and lead a Kyrie and a Lamb of God. For the ICC, it's the Gloria. For the CCC, it's a sequence. And the CCC also has a component where the ICC has a component where you teach the mystery of faith as if you were teaching it to an assembly. Each level involves some type of either pitch matching or sight reading. And then there are written tests at each level. And so the level of complexity of each of those things increases with each level of the certificate.
Let's just say that let's say any of the certificate programs. Okay.
Mhm.
So BCC, ICC, CCC.
Right.
Okay. So let's say I'm listening to this and I want to start. I mean, how do I start working towards a cantor certificate? What's my first step?
Well, you would want to start by looking at this scope and sequence because it would outline the expectations, and you'd have an opportunity also to look at the um, document on the website that has the application and the expectations, including the repertoire list, because there's an approved repertoire list. And so you would look at that, decide on the music that you think you'd like to prepare. You would, of course, fill out and submit an application. And once it's processed, the certificate administrator would reach out to you with lots of guidance and specifics. You would also want to start immersing yourself in any documents you might be needing to use to study for the written tests. And for example, in the scope and sequence, you would see that for the BCC, there is a test on some sections of Sing to the Lord, the USCCB document. So you would want to go ahead and start looking at that. If you perhaps need a little refresher in the area of really basic music theory and the order of the mass, you would want to start looking at that. And we have suggested resources for all of those things. We provide study guides as well, so you're not groping in the dark for, what do I study? It's pretty clear. And then when you feel you're ready, you contact the certificate administrator for instructions on how to schedule your adjudication. And almost all of those now are virtual. Almost all of the adjudications are virtual.
That was going to be my next question is, virtual, in person. Let's just, I'm making this up, Gail, but let's just say January 1st, I'm like, okay, I want to work towards a Cantor certificate. Like how far in advance do I need from the time that I start studying to when it's essentially available in terms of the adjudication?
Well, we're able to do virtual adjudication. The beauty of the virtual is that we're able to do them at any time during the year.
Great.
And so if you decided in January, I really would like to work on the BCC. I would say you would want to take a look at the website, take in all that information I talked about. You would want to reach out then to the certificate administrator. Actually, she would reach out to you if you submit an application. But even if not, their contact information is on the website, so you'd be able to reach out to ask any questions and to talk about what kind of timeline you have in mind. And based on your background, your experience, the time you have available to prepare, the certificate administrator would help you envision an appropriate timeline. For the BCC, I would say it's feasible to complete it within a month of the time that you decide that you want to pull the trigger. Yeah, about a month for that. For the ICC, it would be longer because there's more material to prepare for the adjudication and for the written tests, and there's also an essay component. And the essay component can be completed within 2 months of the adjudication. So you can either work on it before, you can do the essays first if you want to, or you can do them up to 2 months after. And so again, it would be feasible to prepare for the vocal adjudication and the theory and Sing to the Lord test within a month's time frame. And that Sing to the Lord test also includes some questions from the general instruction of the Roman Missal. So there's a little bit to study from there too.
For example, with the germ, the general instruction of the Roman Missal, would we have to read the entire germ, or would you give us specific areas that
we tell you specific, the specific, not pages, but paragraphs, both from Sing to the Lord and from the germ. We tell you exactly which parts to study, to focus on.
Okay.
And those tests are multiple choice, so it's not like writing big essays about them or anything. It's just really knowing some of the key information that a cantor needs to know and understand about the liturgy, not just about singing, but about the liturgy as a whole. And then the essays, again, some cantors prefer to do those first. Others want to take the 2 months afterwards. And some of them want to do it right away. They want to finish within a week or two after they have their adjudication. Some take the whole 2 months. The only thing you don't want to do is wait until the last minute, to wait till a day before the 2 months are up and then try to write them, because that does involve using some resources and discussing the Psalms and the ministry and spirituality of the cantor. So it's a very reflective exercise. The Cantor colleague certificate takes a longer preparation time because there's what we call the big liturgy exam. It's the same exam that other colleague certificates, such as the organ colleague certificate, also require. And it's graded by outside graders who have degrees in liturgy and all. And it's only given twice a year. And it really takes several months to prepare for it. And you have a mentor assigned to you. You have to sign up for that exam enough in advance that they can apply a mentor to kind of walk you through the process of writing practice essays and preparing your notes and all of that. So for the Cantor colleague exam, it's probably, depending on when you're going to take the exam, it could be a process of up to 6 months from start to finish.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now, if I were a well-seasoned cantor, and I wanted to jump to the CCC. Is that even possible, or is the BCC and the ICC the respective prerequisites for the next
They
following
are.
exam?
They are prerequisites, and it's because of the spiritual journey.
Hmm.
It's surprising that some applicants come into the certificate process really unaware of the non-vocal part of being a cantor. They're very, well versed in singing well and having a nice cantor presence, but they don't have an awareness of the need to prepare the readings and understand the connection between the readings and the psalm and how it all connects together. So so that part is important. It's important to start at the beginning level. The other thing is that we sometimes have music directors that ask that, well, can't I just start with the cantor colleague? Well, a music director who's placing a priority on certification probably is going to expect their cantors to become certified. And so they need to really experience firsthand each level of the certificates so that they can help guide and mentor their cantors on the journey as well.
Can you talk for a little bit about the spiritual aspect? You've mentioned it a couple times now.
Right. Yes, it's woven throughout. At the basic level, at the BCC level, we expect cantors to understand that it is important in preparing the psalm to do the readings, to reflect, to pray, and to think about how you're going to take that psalm beyond the ambo and live it in your daily life. And so the expectation there is for them just to write a short paragraph describing how they prepare the psalm when they're scheduled to proclaim it, and what resources they like to use. So they might mention something like, the workbook for lectors and gospel readers, or living liturgy, or any of the different resources that are out there to help cantors do that. The ICC has 2 essays. One of them involves choosing a psalm. The cantor chooses a psalm and talks about that psalm and the meaning and how it relates to the gospel and to the first reading for that particular Sunday of the liturgical year, and what the cantor is called to do and to be in proclaiming that psalm. So it also addresses the connection with the assembly, and the second essay focuses again on the role of cantor and what impact that psalm has on you, and how you intend to take it out into the world, and what you hope to inspire the assembly to do with that in taking it out into the world. That essay, I always enjoy grading that one because it frequently has a current events twist to it. So, for example, people might work in a natural disaster that's just happened, a tornado, or the pandemic, or some other thing that's in the news that has taken place that really relates to their ministry. The cantor colleague also involves an interview with the certificate administrator where those kinds of things are discussed. And the exam really is the big exam, is more about how do you take all these things and apply them. If you are asked to plan a liturgy, for example, for the rites of initiation, or for this particular liturgical season of the year. So at that point, it all kind of comes together.
It makes a lot of sense now why you would have to do them incrementally and do the basic and then the intermediate and then colleague. Right. That makes total sense. Okay, so a couple more questions. I know I've been peppering you with questions all day, so
that's great.
Is there someone in my area or someone that I can contact that can help me prepare if while I'm preparing I need some help?
I think you would find that the certificate administrator, and that is right now Paula Vasey for the BCC, Rosemary Gondek for the ICC, and Dee Catani for the CCC. And again, their contact information is on the website. That would be your first go-to person, the administrator for the certificate that you're seeking. They would provide lots of guidance and details and direct you to resources and help you talk through any questions or concerns. Your music director is likely to be another good source of support, particularly in preparing for the virtual adjudication. And there may also be other NPM members in your area. It's interesting to look at the website because we have a list of all of the certificate recipients that goes back almost 20 years. I think that the BCC was created almost 20 years ago. And so you can see who from your area has earned these certificates. And so sometimes there are opportunities there to reach out and get to know people. But there's lots of support available internally. And again, your music director would be a likely person. Your local NPM chapter might also have some levels of support. They might even have an adjudicator who lives in your area who could give you some guidance, even if the adjudication itself is virtual.
Right. Okay. Now, last question, and I should have asked this before, but it just came to mind now. Previously, it seemed like Cantor certifications and Cantor certificate programs needed to be adjudicated at specific local events, which we talked about already in terms of virtual, but also at conventions. Do I have to attend a national convention in order to get a certificate for Cantor?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
Recorded adjudications have always been available, and the convention opportunities they became available just as an additional option. Now, the downside to that was that, of course, first of all, it involved travel and expense that, unless you were going to the convention anyway, that was travel and expense that you might not be counting on. But the other thing is that it created a situation where the applicants and the adjudicators were having to miss significant portions of the convention in order to carry out the adjudication. The other drawback to the convention ones, were that people were scheduled back to back to back. So one applicant would finish, we'd give them, lightning quick feedback while the next person is there waiting for their turn. And they were in an unfamiliar surrounding. I mean, there were a lot of parts of it that did not best serve the interest of the cantor. So, and you're right that there were some regional events occasionally, and I think occasionally there may still be some of those taking place, depending on the availability of the clinicians, the adjudicators and all. But again, those involve time and travel and expense for the applicants. During the pandemic, we pivoted because the convention became virtual. And so the ones we would have done at the convention, we did virtually, and it really worked well. And we've stayed with that. The advantage, one of the biggest advantages, is that the cantor is in his or her natural habitat, in the space where they're used to ministering. They can put together a little assembly of their friends and look up and see a friendly face, see friendly faces smiling at them. And they don't have the adjudicator sitting there in front of them, appearing to be taking notes and all. So they prepare it with their own accompanist, again, their own people, and they upload a video. And we send the written tests to they have a proctor, which usually is their music director. And we send the written tests to that proctor, who sends them back to us. And then the adjudication feedback is virtual. The Cantor Certificate Administrator lines up adjudicators who view the recording, and we meet on Zoom with the candidate to provide private, and personalized feedback in a much more relaxed setting. So it's worked really well. We've gotten great feedback.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a very feasible goal in that regard too, because like you said, you can do it in maybe a more attainable schedule based on what you have, but also, like you said, like it's in a space that you're used to singing in, the mic, how live it is or how weak it is, and
right.
The acoustic. It's just, that it seems to me like not all technology is bad. It seems like this is quite the perk in terms of adjudicating and trying to obtain a Cantor certificate.
Yes, we're pleased that it has worked out so well. And this way, anybody from any part of the country has access to an adjudication at a time that's convenient for them.
I love that. I love that. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for not only just today, but for the clear amount of time you have spent on Cantor certificates with the rest of the support team that supports you too. If anyone has any questions or wants to go look up Cantor certificates, maybe go after one themselves as a New Year's resolution, where can they find that information?
They can find it on the NPM website. On the main page, there is a tab called Formation. And if you go under that drop-down menu, it says Certificates. And if you click on Certificates, then it shows the different certificates that are available, and you can click on Cantor Certificates and it'll take you right there.
Excellent. All right. Gail, this has been great. Thank you for your time today. It is so appreciated.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.